beseech thee to send down thy heavenly wisdom from above to direct and guide us in all our consultations. And grant that we, having thy fear always before our eyes, and laying aside all private interests, prejudices, and partial affections, the result of all our counsels may be to the glory of thy blessed name, the maintenance of true religion and justice, the safety, honor, and happiness of the king, the public weal, peace, and tranquility of the island, and the uniting and knitting together of the hearts of all persons and estates within the same, in true Christian love and charity, one towards another, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
This honorable House now resumes its sitting. Call of the roll.
Mrs. Holness, Mr. Bartlett, Mr. Holness, Dr. Clark, Dr. Chang, Miss Grange, Mrs. Williams, Mrs. Malawu Fort, Dr. Tufton, Mr. Mackenzie, Mr. Chuck, Mr. Vaz, Mr. Charles, Mr. Green, Mr. Warmington, Mr. Morgan, Mr. Hutchinson, Mr. Terry Long, Miss Smith, Dr. Dunn, Mrs. Cuthbert Flynn, Mr. Main, Mr. Davis, Mr. Witter, Mr. Brown, Dr. Brownberg, Dr. Charles, Mr. Chin, Mr. Clark, Mr. Cousins, Miss Crawford, Miss Daly, Miss Davis, Mr. Golding, Mr. Graham, Dr. Guy, Miss Hamilton, Miss Hannah, Mr. Henriquez, Mr. Henry, Mr. Hilton, Mr. Jackson, Mr. Lawrence, Miss Lee, Mr. Miller, Mr. Morgan, Miss Morrison, Mrs. Nita Garvey, Mr. Paulwell, Mr. Phillips, Dr. Phillips, Mr. Robertson, Mr. Robinson, Mr. Samuda, Mr. Shaw, Mr. Siblist, Mr. Slowly, Mrs. Vaz, Dr. Wheatley, Mr. Williams, Mr. Wilson, Mr. Wright, Mr. Warmington.
As usual, I have the honor and the distinct pleasure of welcoming all persons who have joined us this evening in Parliament as we continue the sectoral debate where the Member of Parliament, the Minister of Legal and Constitutional Affairs, the Honourable Marlene Malawu Fort, KC MP, will make her presentation, as also the Member of Parliament from St. Catherine, North Central, Mrs. Natalie Nita Garvey, will also make her contribution. As usual, I am very happy to welcome you all. And this evening I have the great pleasure of welcoming a number of members of the diplomatic corps, and I ask the Parliament to forgive me if I name them, because it's really good to have you, and we trust, like all other persons joining us this evening, you will find the presentations and the sitting of the Parliament most informative. This evening we have the British High Commissioner, Mrs. Slater, with us. I see the High Commissioner from India, Mr. Masuki Rongson, is here with us. And there is also Mr. Lasford Douglas, Deputy Dean of the Diplomatic Corps, Mr. Sergei Petrovich from the Embassy of the Russian Federation is also here with us this afternoon. Ms. Elza de Castro from the Republic of Brazil, the Embassy of the Federative Republic of Brazil. Mr. Antonio Cabedo, Ambassador for the Republic of Chile. Is he here? I'm not sure I'm seeing him as yet. No. But we're expecting him. I'm not seeing him. Mr. David Sanchez, here. Welcome. Happy to have you. Mr. Sanchez is the Charge d'Affaires of the Republic of Costa Rica. Mr. Rolando da Villa Gallardo is here. From the Republic of Cuba, Mr. Cristian de Silva, right here with us, Charge d'Affaires for the High Commission of Canada, and Miss Nicole Weber. Is Miss Weber here? No, I have not seen her. And Dr. Richard Ameya, right here, from the Resident Coordinator for the United Nations. We want to welcome you all very much to the sitting of Parliament this evening. And to thank you all for taking the time out to share with us in this evening. Is Mr. Wayne Robertson, the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Legal Affairs, here with us? Not as yet. I know he will join us. Members of the Constitutional Reform Committee. Do we have members? We have a member, welcome. And all other guests that are here with us, there are a number of people. I know they are here to support persons who are speaking this evening. We welcome you all. And of course, those joining us online via the different social media platforms, we are delighted to have you join us this afternoon. Is the head of the Deputy Head of the Belgium here? No? Not seeing the person as yet. Well, in their absence, we look forward to them coming and joining us as we are expecting them. So, without further ado, I will turn over to the House Leader for your guidance. Yes. I'm guided. Can we go through the agenda? Very well. Statements by ministers, announcements, bills brought from the Senate, petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motions given orally, questions and answers to questions, motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice, motions relating to sittings of the House, motions for leave to introduce bills, presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained, public business.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today, it is our intention to continue the sectoral debate, and it is my pleasure to advise you, Madam Speaker, that our first speaker will be the Honorable Marlene Malahoo Fort, Minister of Legal and Constitutional Affairs and Member of Parliament for St. James West Central. And then she will be followed by Mrs. Natalie Nita Headley, Member of Parliament. Madam Speaker, she will be followed by Mrs. Natalie Nita Garvey, Member of Parliament for St. Catherine East Central. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I now invite the Honorable Marlene Malahoo Fort, Minister of Legal and Constitutional Affairs, to make her presentation.
Madam Speaker, thank you for welcoming those who have taken the time to be here in this Honorable House this afternoon. I'd like to especially recognize members of my St. James West Central constituency who have taken the journey to be here. Madam Speaker, as you know, my role as minister sits atop my role as the duly elected member of this Honorable House from the constituency of St. James West Central. In both roles, every day, the opportunity to make a difference in the lives of people around me stands before me. Madam Speaker, as I paused while preparing this presentation, and I reflected on the road I have traveled so far, it really struck me that I have been leading change practically all my life. Madam Speaker, this is my 8th
Is there a problem, Minister?
Madam Speaker, this is my 8th contribution to these sectoral debates and my 2nd as Minister. I remain humbled by the Prime Minister's confidence in me to lead this reform ministry, as he often calls it, to bring unprecedented focused attention to the government's legislative and constitutional reform aspirations. The work to be done is historic. All of us who have stepped out on the line in public service through representational politics knows the personal and professional vulnerabilities we experience. Every day, Madam Speaker, we encounter people with problems.
Minister, I regret I'm going to stop you for a moment, and I'm inviting you as a speaker, and I hope you'll be gracious enough to accept to come and sit in the seat that Dr. Chan usually occupies, so that the members in the gallery who have come to hear you don't have to be bending over to see you. Are you coming? Minister, members of the Diplomatic Corps, and I'm very conscious of their comfort. They make us all so comfortable when we are with them. Australian. Huh? Yes. So I am giving you permission to speak from a seat other than your own.
Let me take this one. Let me take this one. Madam Speaker, if it makes it better for those who have taken the time to be here. As I was saying, Madam Speaker, all of us who have stepped out on the line in public service through representational politics knows the personal and professional vulnerabilities we experience. Every day we encounter people with problems, and for some of these problems, they do in fact have the know-how. But there is also a whole host of other problems that are not amenable to authoritative expertise or standard operating procedures. These challenges, Madam Speaker, cannot be solved by any of us who thinks we can provide answers from on high, although people do look to us for easy answers to them. In solving these challenges, we require learning new ways, changing attitudes, values, and behavior in order to thrive in the new environment. Madam Speaker, when we push for change and people feel threatened, they take aim at us. As we, for example, question the gap between value and behavior, challenge long-standing belief, and ask for new ways of doing things, we appear dangerous to people. The danger comes when we confront people with loss. Because I believe, Madam Speaker, people do not resist change per se. People resist loss. When we question the values, beliefs, or habits of a lifetime, we place ourselves on the line. When we disturb the personal and institutional equilibrium that people know, we place ourselves on the line. When we tell people that they need what they need to hear rather than what they want to hear, we place ourselves on the line. Madam Speaker, serving as we do is a risky business, but I believe it is worth the risk. The goals extend beyond personal gain or personal advancement. By making the lives of people around us better, we find meaning and purpose in life. All of us who serve from these seats bank on the support and kind understanding of our constituents, our colleagues, our friends, and our families. I should like to acknowledge with profound gratitude the many, Madam Speaker, especially my family and close friends, who have helped and held me along the way, who have stood and continue to stand in the gap with me. Although it is not possible within the context of this presentation to name all of them, you will understand when I single out my husband, the Honorable Justice Ian Fort. I cannot thank him enough for his love, his support, and wise counsel. May he, Madam Speaker, always know how much I truly love, admire, and respect him. Madam Speaker, permit me to use the opportunity to also pay homage to my St. James West Central constituents. I acknowledged their presence earlier. I should like to further acknowledge my constituency office staff, the constituency executive and management teams, and I warmly greet those who are tuned in, watching and listening attentively to this presentation. Madam Speaker, among those who have journeyed here is a particular constituent who always take issue with the Parliament and with the government and with the administration. And I believe that he should learn something observing today in the Parliament. Madam Speaker, I also remain grateful for the cooperation and support of the cadre of professional civil and public servants, my fellow parliamentarians on both sides, the parliamentary staff, and the ministers of government, and you, Madam Speaker. I acknowledge and thank my permanent secretary, Mr. Robertson, who is on his way, for his support. And I also thank the Office of the Prime Minister and Prime Minister Holness in particular for his support and for the accommodation at the Office of the Prime Minister, and also my friend, the Minister of Justice, for the accommodation at the Ministry of Justice. Madam Speaker, the entire staff at the Ministry of Legal and Constitutional Affairs, especially the smaller team in my Office of Minister, as well as the close protection officers who are assigned, they provide much support in advancing the work of the ministry, and I want to thank them. I will now turn attention to the work of the ministry during the reporting period of April 1 to March 31, 2023, and a little beyond up to this point. Madam Speaker, the focus will be on the constitutional reform work, though I will update the Honourable House on the other areas of responsibility of the ministry. As you know, Madam Speaker, the ministry's mandate includes spearheading the most meaningful, comprehensive, and consequential post-independence constitutional reform work to be undertaken in our nation. The goal is to ultimately produce a new Constitution of Jamaica, enacted by the Parliament of Jamaica and approved by the people of Jamaica. Among other things, we aim to establish the Republic of Jamaica as a parliamentary republic, replacing the constitutional monarchy and affirming our self-determination and cultural heritage. It is interesting to note in passing, Madam Speaker, how as territories under British rule progressed towards self-government and independence, including as independent republics, the British Empire evolved into the Commonwealth of Nations with a British monarch as the recognized head of the Commonwealth. Madam Speaker, on the occasion of our nation's 60th anniversary of independence, the people and government of Jamaica were invited to reflect on our accomplishments and to determine what other steps needed to be taken to progress the goals of independence. When the urgency. However, Madam Speaker, the place of the monarch is deeply protected from easy change in the Constitution of Jamaica. Therefore, moving on from a constitutional monarchy form of government to a republic requires the Parliament to go through a very specific constitutional amendment process, with a bill for an Act of Parliament passed by the votes of not less than 2/3 of all the members of each House and submitted to the majority of the electors qualified to vote for the election of members of the House of Representatives to vote to approve the bill. The process, Madam Speaker, is complex and lengthy. The process becomes even more complex and lengthier, nigh impossible, some say, and in some cases, if government and opposition are at odds. Nothing goes to the people for their approval unless Parliament agrees to the change. Furthermore, Madam Speaker, taking a deliberate decision to break a constitution on your own terms in a period of peace and to embark on the road to republic in a period of peace is a truly historic journey. It is a journey that will result in us adopting a new form of government and a new head of state in a period of peace, and culminating with the creation of a homegrown Jamaican constitution in a period of peace. This has never been done. Over the course of modern constitutional history, constitutions have often emerged from the rubble of war. They have often been written in the crucible of chaos. They have often been enacted at gunpoint. They have commonly been accompanied by a quartet of legal, social, cultural, and political changes. Think of the United States Constitution, a revolutionary constitution whose seeds were planted in a bloody battle for independence. Or think of the German and Japanese constitutions. Each is an imposed constitution that was the product of conquest in war. Or more recently, the South African Constitution, adopted to consolidate the country's transition from the violence of apartheid to the promise of democracy and equality. These and many other constitutions have come through revolution. In contrast, ours will be achieved, we will achieve our collective aspiration to replace King Charles III, King of Jamaica, with a head of state, a Jamaican head of state, to Jamaicanize our highest law and to enact, for the first time, a constitution by us, of us, and for us. Having said that, I note that some have taken issue with how the administration is going about the work of constitutional reform. I understand that many among those who have taken issue would prefer a different approach. We are pursuing these changes through a structured process designed to proceed through distinct and clearly defined phases, consistent with the rules in the current Constitution and more broadly with the rule of law. This is not how constitutions have historically been created. We are a people known for doing things differently. When our gold medal, record-breaking, world record-breaking athletes dominate the tracks on the international stages, and our hearts stir with pride at the prospects of what they can achieve and have achieved, we know we are a people who do it differently. When we see our black, green, and gold flag flown on center stage, we stand tall as Jamaicans, and only as Jamaicans do. I sense that even though when I explain the logic of the historic approach, some of those who disagree with the process will continue to disagree. Because, Madam Speaker, I believe the quarrel over process is more than what meets the eye. I believe it is about the deeper, more intractable issue of underlying value choices. For those who genuinely do not understand the process, but who are genuinely intent on learning about it, I want you to know that the process to change the Constitution of Jamaica is fixed by the Constitution of Jamaica itself, and was fixed when the Constitution came into effect. I will come back to the others whose quarrel is of a different nature. In the Independent Jamaica Council for Human Rights, Limited, and others, against Marshall Burnett and others, our highest court pointed out that the framers of the Jamaica Independence Constitution 1962 had made certain very significant departures from the constitutional practice of the United Kingdom. The governing institutions and practices of the nation were identified and stated in a single instrument, the Constitution. The Constitution has the effect by Section 2, subject to Section 49 and the repealed Section 50. If any other law is inconsistent with the Constitution shall prevail, and the other law shall, to the extent of the inconsistency, be void. Thus, the Constitution, and not the, as in the United Kingdom, Parliament, is to be sovereign here in Jamaica. Madam Speaker, the framers of the Constitution took great care to grade its provisions so as to require differing levels of popular support depending on the structural significance of the provision to be altered. I invite my fellow parliamentarians to pay very close attention. To alter some provisions of the Constitution, which may be described as deeply entrenched. Section 49, subsections 3 and 4 of the Constitution requires a bill effecting the alteration to be introduced in this House of Representatives. A period of at least 6 months to elapse between the introduction of the bill into the House and its passing by the House. The bill to be passed in each House is to be passed in each House by the votes of not less than 2/3 of all the members of that House. And the bill has to be approved by a majority of the electorate. These deeply entrenched provisions are listed in Section 49(3). They include Section 49 itself, which sets out the process for altering the Constitution. Section 2, which speaks to the effect of the Constitution as the supreme law. Section 34, which deals with the establishment of the Parliament of Jamaica, consisting of Her Majesty, which includes her heirs, now His Majesty, a Senate, and a House of Representatives. Section 35, which deals with the composition of the Senate from the government and opposition sides. Section 36, which deals with the disqualification from and election to the House of Representatives. Section 39, which addresses qualification for membership in the Senate and House of Representatives, subject to disqualification and including Commonwealth citizenship, age, and ordinary residence here in Jamaica. Section 63, subsection 2, which deals with sessions of Parliament. Section 64, subsections 2, 3, and 5, which deal with the life, extension, and dissolution of Parliament. Section 65, which deals with the appointment of senators after a general election. And Section 68(1), which vests the executive authority of Jamaica in the monarch. Madam Speaker, these deeply entrenched provisions, which require a referendum to change, were set at independence in the same way that the process to change them were set then. Because we have not done a referendum since independence, no changes have been made to these provisions. I want to say to those who are wondering whether I, as minister, chose what requires a constitutional referendum, I want to say to them that I have no choice in the matter. I have no choice in the matter. The Constitution sets the matters that require a constitutional referendum to ultimately make the change. Madam Speaker, as you know, there is also a much larger class of sections and subsections of the Constitution listed in Section 49, subsection 2, and these are described as entrenched, not deeply entrenched. To amend one of these provisions, Sections 49, subsections 2 and 4 require the same procedure to be followed as in the case of a deeply entrenched provision, save that the bill need not be submitted to the electorate. Madam Speaker, all provisions of the Constitution, neither deeply entrenched nor entrenched, may be amended if supported by the votes of a majority of all members of each House. But even these provisions enjoy some special protection, since, as we know, all questions not involving any alteration of the Constitution are determined by a majority of the votes of members present and voting, and not a majority of all members. Madam Speaker, in the written presentation for completion, I have set out the full provisions of Section 49. I will invite those who get to the presentation to read the provision in full. But I say to you, even for lawyers, it is complexly written and does not lend itself to easy understanding. The section speaks to sessions of Parliament because the framers of our constitutions, in their wisdom, realize that amending the most significant provisions may go across sessions and may even go across the life of a Parliament, and has made provision for that. So we can start the change in this legislative year. It's carried over to the next legislative year. We may start the change in the life of this Parliament, and it's carried over to the next Parliament after general elections. So under the Constitution, each session of Parliament is required to be held at such place within Jamaica and commencing at such time as the Governor-General, acting on the advice of the Cabinet or of a member of or of a minister to whom the Cabinet has delegated the authority, by proclamation, publish in the Gazette the session. Madam Speaker, the Constitution specifically provides that sessions must be so arranged that a period of 6 months shall not intervene between the last sitting of Parliament in one session and the first sitting thereof in the next session. Some countries do not have that, and their parliaments adjourn for extended period. By definition, each session begins with the first meeting of the House after a prorogation or dissolution and continues until terminated by another prorogation or dissolution. The actual practice, as you know, Madam Speaker, has been to have only one prorogation in each year, so that for each 12-month period, there is usually one session. The termination of a session by prorogation is effected by means of a proclamation issued by the Governor-General and published in the Gazette. And here the Governor-General is acting on the advice of the Prime Minister specifically. The date for commencement of the new session is also fixed in the same way. It's important to know that prorogation terminates a session, but not the life of a parliament. In contrast, when the Governor-General dissolves the parliament, the dissolution ends the life of the parliament. And you know what happens after that? Elections are held. Madam Speaker, having said all of this, if we were to reform the Constitution all at once, we would make it mightily difficult for us to absorb the changes all at once. Already we struggle with implementing changes that are made. The three phases of the constitutional reform work, beginning with the most difficult process, is informed by the three distinct procedures for changing the three distinct categories of provisions in the Constitution. Beginning with the most complex process, Madam Speaker, is informed by 2 points that were made in the ruling of our highest court in the Marshall Burnett case that I referred to earlier. Firstly, Madam Speaker, it is the substance of the law that must be regarded, not the form. If in substance a bill impliedly alters entrenched provisions of the Constitution, it is necessary to employ the procedure appropriate for alteration of an entrenched provision. In Section 49, subsection 9, Clause B, alter is defined to include amend, modify, reenact with or without amendment or modification, make provision in lieu of, suspend, repeal, or add to. The Board of the Privy Council accepted a principle that was held in another case, that the word amend or repeal cover an alteration by implication. I say that to say there is a logic to the approach taken to phase the work that is being aided by the Constitutional Reform Committee, and that logic is grounded in the Constitution itself and in the interpretation of the amendment procedure by our highest court. Madam Speaker, when we considered the matter internally within the ministry, against the provisions of the Constitution itself and the interpretation by the Privy Council, we thought it made good sense to start with the deeply entrenched provisions to avoid any procedural error, because, Madam Speaker, a procedural error becomes an error of substance when the wrong amendment procedure is used, and this results in a law passed inconsistently with the Constitution becoming void. Let me now return to those whose quarrel with the process is really a quarrel about a much deeper issue. Madam Speaker, when and I think other members of the Constitutional Reform Committee, listen closely, beneath the noise, to the concerns raised in the public sphere, we cannot help but agree that we have to pay very close attention to the power dynamics of the state and the government. Madam Speaker, I agree that greater accountability from all parts of government is required, and a lot of the issues that are raised in the many fora that we have held, in the consultations we have had, in the meetings we have done, a lot of those issues turn on grievance with government, the failure of government to deliver efficiently and effectively, and issues of lack of accountability with impunity. Madam Speaker, all of us in the Constitutional Reform Committee agree that trust in government is low, but I go even further and add that trust in the society at large is broken. Working in this context, therefore, makes it mighty difficult. But you know, Madam Speaker, I strongly believe that the nation with the problem must go through a process together to become the nation with a solution. Yes. The problems have to be internalized, they have to be owned, and ultimately resolved, not only by the leaders, but by the led, in order to achieve enduring progress. Madam Speaker, let me make it abundantly clear. It is not my intention to be irresponsibly unwavering in my stance about the approach. It is not my intention. I have never considered it a virtue to cling to the same opinion, no matter the cost. I know that when you take on an issue, you become the issue in the eyes of many. It follows then that the way to get rid of the issue is to get rid of you. Whatever the outcome, you will be held responsible for the disequilibrium the process has generated, the losses that people have had to absorb, and the backlash resulting from those who feel left behind. Madam Speaker, I do not want us to get rid of the issue of reforming our Constitution. An important function of a Constitution is to give protection against governmental misbehavior. Reforming the Constitution of Jamaica is much bigger than me or the Constitutional Reform Committee. Therefore, Madam Speaker, we, on this side, on that side, and in the entire society, we must keep sharp focus on the work to be done. The history of the relationship between Jamaica and the United Kingdom of King Charles III, King of Jamaica, is complicated. It includes the transatlantic slave trade, one of the greatest atrocities in human history, the legacy and injustice of which we are still living with today. The better we understand that history and come to terms with it, the more urgent the reform work becomes. Madam Speaker, we watched with fascination as our new king ascended the throne without any input from us. I hope, Madam Speaker, the kingdom will also watch with fascination as we, the people, establish the office of President of the Republic of Jamaica with a Jamaican without divided loyalties as our head of state in a period of peace without external pressures. You know, Madam Speaker, I think it feels fitting that Jamaica and the United Kingdom are both entering important periods in their history around the same time. As the reign of King Charles III gets going, the Republic of Jamaica is being established here. But you know, Madam Speaker, one of the questions that has arisen in the public space is, why a republic? What does it mean to have a republic? And of course, you know, it has led me to research and research and research. So republic means res publica, literally the property of the people. A true republic can only exist when the citizens consent to be bound together under the law. It is said that there is nothing more despicable than a government that falsely assumes the appearance and name of the people. What then, Madam Speaker, is the foundation of a just government? What kind of rule is best? How should a leader behave in office? You know, Madam Speaker, I'm a moderate conservative, I confess. And so I believe in working with others for the good of the country and its people. That's me. But you know, Madam Speaker, it is said that there are universal laws that govern the conduct of human affairs. Independent of time and place, these universal laws guarantee fundamental freedom to everyone, and they constrain the way in which government should behave. These universal laws command us to do our duty and forbid from doing wrong. Madam Speaker, the laws of a state rule over a leader just as he or she rules over the people. The rule of government should therefore be in agreement with the law. It is said, Madam Speaker, that the best form of government embraces a balance of powers, as a government must be founded on a system of checks and balances. The ideal government is said to be one which combines the best qualities of a monarchy, an aristocracy, and a democracy. And yes, a democracy as a form of government is different from a republic, say the scholars. So this state, which embraces a balance of power founded on a system of checks and balances, would have an executive with preeminent and royal qualities, but also grants certain powers to leading citizens and to the people according to their wishes and judgment. This kind of constitution, first of all, offers a great degree of equality to citizens, but it also provides stability. And I want everyone listening to listen attentively, because we do not have to reinvent the wheel. When one type of government alone rules, it frequently decays into the corresponding degenerate form. So history shows that the king becomes a tyrant, the aristocracy turns into a factional oligarchy, and the democracy in turn becomes mob rule and anarchy. A mixed and balanced system does not usually turn into something else. Instead, it remains stable unless leaders become wicked, for there is no reason for a government to change when each citizen is guaranteed his own role and there is no underlying debased form into which it might slip and fall. Madam Speaker, as we rearrange the state, leadership must be of exceptional character and integrity. Those who govern a country, say the experts, must possess great courage, ability, and resolve. For among the crowds, history notes, are those who will destroy our country through revolution and upheaval, either because they feel guilty about their own misdeeds and fear punishment, or because they are deranged enough to long for sedition and civil discord, or because of their own financial mismanagement. They prefer to bring the whole country down in flames rather than burn alone. So say the pages of history. When such people find leaders to help them carry out their wicked plans, the republic is tossed on the waves. True leaders always put the interest of their nation above their own. All the time. And so the job is to steer the ship of state smoothly and steadily. You know, Madam Speaker, it is also said that the ideal state is one in which people desire praise and honor while avoiding humiliation and disgrace. That means we all have to watch our conduct. Madam Speaker, having said all of this, I'm pleased to advise this Honourable House that the work to advance reform of the Constitution progressed significantly on March 1, 2023, with the appointment of the members of the Constitutional Reform Committee. Madam Speaker, I have previously indicated in this Honourable House, through various ministerial statements, the purpose of the Constitutional Reform Committee, which is to assist in providing expert guidance and oversight to the government and people of Jamaica during the constitutional reform process, as we aim, among other things, to implement the recommendations of the Joint Select Committee on Constitutional and Electoral Reform, on which consensus remains, while helping to build consensus where it has eroded or is non-existent on those matters and on related matters. I repeat this, Madam Speaker, because when I assess some of the concerns raised in the public space, it appears that some are of the view that the work to reform the Constitution can be at large and should be at large without structure, without having regard to subject matters, and that we just call up the people, have a reasoning with the people, hear from them what's going on without any direction. Not so. And it is because it is important to understand this why I have taken the time to go through the Constitution and the provisions, including those provisions set in the Constitution for which changes must ultimately be approved by the majority of the electorate who vote for members of this House in an election. And I have taken time to specify that it is not just anybody in the public who will approve the changes made by Parliament.
Madam Speaker, I now ask that the standing orders be suspended to enable the Minister to continue her speech to its conclusion. Notwithstanding the time limit on speeches, Madam Speaker.
Members, the question before you is that the Minister be given sufficient time to complete her presentation. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, I'm very grateful for the kind indulgence of my colleagues on both sides. Madam Speaker, as I was saying, that so much noise has been made about the Constitutional Reform Committee, how it has been constituted, its terms, its work, how it sequences everything, that I sometimes wonder whether anyone paid attention to the statements I made in this Honourable House long before the committee was formally established. From the terms of reference for the work of the committee were in draft form, I came to this Honourable House and I informed that the committee was expected and is now required to assess how the passage of time has impacted the recommendations of the Joint Select Committee on Constitutional and Electoral Reform, contained in its final report of 1995, which was submitted to and approved by the Parliament. The committee's role is to advise what fresh perspectives ought to be considered in the light of any new national, regional, or international development between then, 1995, and now, 2003, as well as 2023. The committee is also to recommend any necessary modification to update the recommendations for implementation. We're evaluating the recommendations on the establishment of the Office of President, and through the committee, Cabinet will be advised, after taking into account the views of the people, on the nature of the presidency, the qualification and tenure of the presidency, the legislative, executive, or ceremonial powers to be exercised by the President of the Republic of Jamaica, replacing King Charles III, King of Jamaica, in the constitutional monarchy of Jamaica. The committee is assisting in coordinating the required parliamentary cross and national consultation and collaboration during the various phases of the work. And in particular, the committee will help to educate the electorate on their role in the referendum process in order to successfully transition from a constitutional monarchy to a republic. And Madam Speaker, I pause to say a big thank you to Dr. Lloyd Barnett, who has, within the committee, gone above and beyond to provide answers to frequently asked questions and to set out a host of otherwise complex matters in simple language to help to educate the people. The work of the committee is to generally agree on and guide the sequence of steps to be taken to implement the said recommendations and other recommendations for implementation to achieve the overall reform goal. I keep repeating the recommendations, Madam Speaker, because, as I said before, the issues on which the vote of the majority of the electorate who vote to elect members to this Honourable House will decide on, those issues were set when the Constitution of Jamaica came into effect, and they have not changed since then. have not changed since then. So the issues deliberated on by the then Joint Select Committee on Constitutional and Electoral Reform are the same set of issues under the Constitution that we have to consider. However, there are views that we have to take into account. And including in those views are whether the assumptions underlying the recommendations for one option as opposed to another continue to hold. And that's why we didn't just pick up the recommendations and implement them. We thought it wise to revisit them and refresh them. Madam Speaker, I said that the phasing of the work is informed by the types of provisions in the Constitution and the procedure required to change them. 3 types, 3 phases, 3 sets of provisions. So, phase 1 will deal with the deeply entrenched provisions. Hardest, but it will achieve the goal of establishing the Republic of Jamaica. Doesn't mean that that's the end of the work, by no means. We will have to go on, as many other nations who have transitioned, continue to work out their republic, work it better over time. We need to absorb monumental and complex changes all at once of the magnitude that would come if we were to amend all of the Constitution all at once. On top of it, many Jamaicans do not even know what is contained in the Constitution. And in fact, this is such a sore point internally in the committee, because members have said that we cannot reasonably ask the people to approve changes without educating them on what is contained in the Constitution. And this is a work that is set before us. And I say, as I have said privately to the Prime Minister, it is my hope, Leader of the Opposition, it is my hope that the work to reform the Constitution will continue with commitment from both sides, regardless of what happens after a general election. It's too important a work to be pushed aside, as has been done on many previous occasions. And so, hopefully, we will have a commitment from the leaders on both sides of the parliamentary aisle about committing to the people of Jamaica that the goals to be pursued are so important that we will continue regardless of the changes made after a general election. The second phase of the work will involve the ordinarily entrenched provisions of the Constitution, for which amendments are desired and required, including the Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedom. And let me put to ease those people who wonder whether we are going to change the savings clause, whether we are going to repeal pre-existing laws for which the Church, which has been the moral vanguard of the society on many fronts, is particularly interested in. Let me just say that as a nation, we have many problems, many problems, and we're going to have to work out these problems. We're going to have to hear from each other, because we're going to have to learn to live better with our differences. But this Andrew Holness-led administration is on no path to collide with the Church or any other well-thinking member of the Jamaican society on issues which define the fabric of our society, even in the presence of challenges. While my colleagues clap, I want you to know that we have a lot to work out, because we have a motto which says, out of many, one people. you know, I don't have it in my presentation, but I hear the issue of abortion, and I know my colleague has spoken about it in this House. I say to people that changing the law for abortion will never, never be my platform, for the simple reason that my mother told me that when she was pregnant with me, at every stage of her pregnancy, she was told to abort me. Every stage. She was told that if she didn't abort me, she would die or I would die, or we would be ill. Now, I, in honor of my mother and respect for my own life, take a certain position. Having said that, I understand that others may do otherwise. I'm just saying, me, for my own history, my own narrative, circumstances around my own life, the abortion issue is not mine. Let me make it clear. All right? So by the time we come to phase 3, we would do a full assessment of our state's legal and constitutional infrastructure to facilitate the putting together of a new constitution. And it doesn't mean we're going to throw out everything. Doesn't mean that at all. In fact, it's important for us to understand that Jamaica has experienced unprecedented stability in government. Unprecedented stability. And we are, some say, the oldest black democracy when you look at it by universal adult suffrage. So, in reforming the Constitution, it's not the intention to throw away everything. There are some things that characterize us as Jamaicans that have made us who we are, and we intend to keep them as a matter of choice for us, and we will change what should be changed to allow us to better realize our development aspirations. Madam Speaker, some members of the Constitutional Reform Committee are here. The work of the committee is supported by a secretariat managed by the Ministry of Legal and Constitutional Affairs. Have, by and large, been met. The specifics are set out in the second table in the printed presentation. Number of pieces of legislation per year, the work done in each quarter, up to the end result. Madam Speaker, and this is something that the Wholeness Administration highway, but my goodness, there is so much misinformation out there, it's unbelievable. You may recall, had entered into a memorandum of understanding with the JAMPRO to introduce a comprehensive legal information portal for the laws of Jamaica. The project is funded by the World Bank Group under Component 1 of the Foundations for Competitiveness. I'm happy to report that it is the intention of the ministry to use the web portal to engage on law reform issues. The engagement will serve to inform both the public and the ministry about issues of concern. The portal will provide public access, among other things, to the revised laws of Jamaica, and we're talking about to the annual Acts of Jamaica from the 17th century to the present. It will provide access to the Jamaica Gazette. I cannot wait to see this work go to completion for someone like me who's always looking at the laws and always researching something. Madam Speaker, currently material no longer will extensive time and effort be expended to identify Gazette notices and laws. The portal will also include judgment of the courts. Complements the broader efforts to modernize the Jamaican justice sector, institutions, and processes. The Justice Reform Program and the renewed focus on updating the laws of Jamaica, in particular, are consistent with the high priority accorded by justice and the rule of law. The introduction of this system is part of the government's thrust to improve the ease of doing business and the country. Madam Speaker, you will recall that I had also signaled my ministry's intention to implement the legislative production management system is a comprehensive, modern, computerized tool capable of managing the life cycle of legislation, will connect all government entities involved in the process of drafting and publishing legislation. This will redound to a more efficient legislative review process, the reduction of the amount of paper we use. And this is part of what Prime Minister has been talking about, of modernizing the work of the Parliament and ensuring that the government is sufficiently and appropriately resourced to do the work. Procurement attempts, a consultant has now been identified and should be engaged by July of this year to commence work on the system. And I really want to commend Prime Minister Holness. The vision is a good one for Jamaica, and it will. Madam Speaker, to the subject matter of human rights. Protecting the human rights of the people of Jamaica, a new division in the ministry to focus on the matter. The primary objective is to educate all Jamaicans on their rights, on their responsibilities under the Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedom. Madam Speaker, the enshrined rights and freedoms are guaranteed of others. Jamaicans are very rights conscious, responsibility conscious, because many know their rights more than their wrongs. Madam Speaker, the written presentation has remaining two areas of the presentation: the Legal Reform Department and the Office of the Parliamentary Council. Calls the ministry the Reform Ministry. And he constantly teases me that I didn't imagine how much work he was dumping on me when this ministry was created. So I hear your complaints about the laws. That's why today, so we can move Jamaica from chaos and law breaking to law abiding and order. Madam Speaker, the presentation shows 47 matters on which the Legal Reform Department I'm not going to go into them, but I will invite others to look at what is contained in the written presentation that will be circulated to Council. You know, Madam Speaker, the Office of the Parliamentary Council is blamed for a lot of things when things get slow. But the Office of the Parliamentary Council is in fact very efficient. And I'm really pleased. It has nothing to do with what goes on in the department, but with other matters in the line ministries. And you know, Madam Speaker, as I was preparing the presentation, I was informed that the Chief Parliamentary Council was awarded by the Jamaica Custom Agency. And interestingly, when I was in my role as Attorney General, I had the burden of presiding over the legislation committee of cabinet to go through the bill. And I learned a whole lot. In fact, I'm sure people like the Leader of the Opposition would be pleased that for the first time, schedules have been compiled and are printed, and people don't have to wait for the Ministry of Finance or the custom agencies or TAJ to tell. Look on and you will see. Will take up. The Prime Minister, the Cabinet, on the instruction of the Prime Minister, directed the Ministry to prepare. Madam Speaker, we worked and completed the revised codes from July of last year. So when the Prime Minister said publicly that the work was far advanced, and in fact the work had been done, it is true, it had been done. And I am pleased to say that the codes were presented to the Cabinet, and the Prime Minister will speak more on that when he speaks about the JD. I don't think he will do so today, perhaps next week, having regard to other matters on the parliamentary schedule for today. But PM will decide that when he gets up. But just to say to everyone that the last matter, finally, Madam Speaker, is the inter-ministry collaboration that takes place. one of the strategic objectives of the ministry is to address the slow pace of legislative reform in the wider public sector by strengthening inter-ministry collaboration. The aim is to improve operational efficiency, speed, and the quality of legislation promulgated. Madam Speaker, for the establishment of legislative teams. The teams have now been established, and my ministry is providing good guidance to all ministries in the area of legislation. It's going to take some, Madam Speaker, here retired from his ministerial, a certain bill completed in the Ministry of Labour, and unfortunately, for one reason or another, it didn't happen. Just to say to the former minister, Carl Sumuda, that I will do whatever I can to ensure that all of the good work you did while you were in that post will not go to waste, and that your successor will honour what you have done and bring it to conclusion for the benefit of the people. So, Madam Speaker, with all of that said, I really just want to say that by what has been entrusted to me, and I say a big thank you to everyone who is a companion to the getting on the road to Republic. So, Madam Speaker, as I close, as I've said previously, I really pray to God that He grant me the wisdom to always, may it please you, Madam Speaker.
And to ask you to now invite Mrs. Natalie Nita Garvey, Member of Parliament, St. Catherine.
Invite the member from St. Catherine North Central, Mrs. Natalie Nita Garvey, to make her presentation.
Speaker, as I begin my contribution to this year's sectoral debate, I confess it's being done from a position of both retrospection and introspection. Retrospection, as this year marks a quarter of a century, yes, 21st. First elected in 1998 to the St. Catherine Parish Council, representing the Gingerich Division, then the Lauriston Division, before being elected to the House of Representatives in 2007. This, therefore, marks my 16th year as a Member of Parliament. Who have contributed positively to my gratitude to an awesome God who has sustained me so well. My family for their influence, my loving, supportive husband, my brethren, process easier. Marlon Garvey, team of divisional chairmen, Ms. Denise Murphy-Bramwell, Mr. Desmond Chambers, Councillor Pat Harris, and Councillor Dwight Burke. My constituency family who have cradled me and supported me for 4 consecutive terms as their Member of Parliament, led by Mr. Ricardo Taz James, please know that I love you and I will never take your love for granted. Thank you for the lifetime of forged partnerships and friendship. Thank you. To my comrades on this side of the aisle, led by our leader, in this capacity in service of more for the people we serve. And we are all constrained by the same fiscal realities, to an extent. And in the main, I can truly say, I have always done my best. And for as long as I remain in this position, I will always do my best for my constituents, my constituency, and my country, Jamaica land we love. Representation. As I say, Madam Speaker, this presentation is a lot of introspection. One doesn't want to participate in the sectoral debate simply to have it recorded in Hansard. One wants to participate meaningfully. especially we place our feet, if not even tentatively, on the road to define ourselves as a true sovereign nation, a nation without a sovereign, a republic. I'll refrain from saying too much, Madam Speaker, about the process. However, it is important for me to outline just a few thoughts with respect to the awesome tasks ahead of us. We contemplate an overhaul of our governance structure, our legal framework, and our very constitution. As a child growing up in Brown, too much, constitution weak, or what a little pitney trang, no matter what come at her, she just, that in their own ways, as our constitution is. The constitution has been very weak. And it is marked, Madam Speaker, by so many of our women and children still living on this because of centuries-old impediments or systemic flaws left over from colonialism, which collectively we delayed in addressing and redressing till we fix the Constitution. Open and participatory one. Vested enough, curious enough, concerned enough to ponder on offer any opinion or even keep abreast of deliberations can do so from wherever they are in the country, either through attendance and consultations and town halls, or by watching the live streams, or scrutinizing the notes and minutes that emanate from the various activities. After all, the current constitution is in its 61st year. The new one, based on that trajectory, will constitution that will accompany our youth into their next generation, into adulthood. No measure must be spared to ensure their full and active participation to fix the constitution of the land of their birth, to provide the rights, the opportunities, and outcomes that will cause them to truly say, with pride, responsibility, and understanding. That understanding must no longer be just about the place of birth, but the place of choice to live, to succeed, and to excel. Communication and technology. Our youth were born in it. They change it, they create it, and utilize it far more expertly, and they must be included in this prospection and introspection that I now provide the following overview of the portfolios assigned to me by the Leader of the Opposition. Sports can no longer be considered a luxury in this Jamaican society. It has set the pace. It has become the most tangible vehicle through which they can attain financial security for themselves and for their families. Some have gone on to become global superstars. The toast of any society in which they operate have established a successful legacy beyond their active years in their sport of choice. Some have not done so well, but all have enriched brand Jamaica immeasurably, providing more for our national identity than any other area of economic pursuit, especially within the last 25 years. Important investment to be made. Of athletes must consider the full 360 degree of the requirements to produce a successful athlete across any discipline in an intentional way, meeting their God-given talent with the nutritional, the infrastructural, the emotional, and the financial support. Usually comes from corporate sponsorship, who align themselves with the athlete either after them already boss or are on the verge of obvious success. We must look at the bigger picture. We must look at sports as more than just an event, beyond the specific event of a moment, a day, or a season. It is therefore no wonder, Madam Speaker, that the United Nations Health Organization and the World Bank have each designated sports as one of the pillars of society that has and can make significant contributions to the positive development of economic, educational, and health of any society. On the heels of a devastating pandemic, sport remained one of the champions on the world stage with respect to generating the same levels of revenue, sponsorship, and coverage as it had done prior, and had credible and in some cases outstanding performances from maybe one of the widest cross-section of athletes and events in recent times, and ended 2022 on a winning note. Madam Speaker, at home, we hosted the 49th Carifta Games, the Pan American Band for their second consecutive FIFA World Cup Football Championships, which will be hosted jointly by Australia and New Zealand from July 20th to August 20th. South Africa in July for the World Cup Netball. And of course, Madam Speaker, our talented team of athletes will grace the World Track and Field Championship stage in Budapest. Is a meeting of the national. Jamaica's sport industry is to maximize the outcomes. It's a good time for the investment in the flourishing sports business. I am proposing the appointment of a 7-member council to start an incentive program and reorganize the president. Madam Speaker, Jamaica 29, it will signal 75 years since the island participated in its first Summer Olympic Games. To those who set the pace for what has become one of the most successful platforms for our athletes, coaches, and Jamaicans all across the world. They not only won their races and carved their names in the annals of sporting history, Jamaica finished 20th. And to date, Madam Speaker, we have 88 medals, 26 gold, 26 silver, 26 bronze. We look forward to Paris in 2024 as we keep looking at the bigger picture. Madam Speaker, that would not have been possible without the valuable contributions of successive governments of Jamaica, corporate entities, physical education teachers, coaches and support teams, parents, guardians, the community, and the many fans who travel far and wide to support some of the greatest athletes across the world. As Jamaica continues to be a world leader in sport, Madam Speaker, that background helps to place squarely on the table that sport is one of the most competitive advantages promoted to create more opportunities for all. This we will have to do much as we did for bauxite and tourism and sugar from those days when sugar was called king. We will have to do the same for sport. Based on the doctors, the psychologists, the physiotherapists, how many do we need? How many will remain on the island? How many will we train to be deployed across the region and the wider global village? Madam Speaker, how will we engage with recruiters who will meet our athletes at Gibson Relays or Boys and Girls Champs or Western Champs and other contracts with other contracts and scholarships? Who will ensure that the terms of these contracts and scholarships are in the best interest of our nationals? Madam Speaker, we must decide how much we will invest in select scholarships for placement in colleges or universities here and elsewhere, so that we protect our talent and human resources for sport. We started this journey on crafting the legislation to safeguard our youth in sport. 7 years later, Madam Minister, we're still waiting on that fundamental piece of legislation. Madam Speaker, the forecast for global sports from all the reports we have seen is that sports will continue to grow significantly for another decade at least, by an average of 9% each year. That estimated value will be over some $650 billion as key success factors. Madam Speaker, Jamaica is in a really great place to partake in this space, but we must declare our intentions and implement what is necessary to make it happen. We must be prepared for the bigger picture. Madam Speaker, our Vision 2030 plans are clearly outlined. It spoke to strengthening the role of sport in national development by broadening opportunities for participation in recreational and competitive sports for persons of all age groups, increasing facilities for sporting events at the national community levels and school levels. We can't insist that students and our young people grow where they are planted when we know that where they are and cannot thrive on barren land. I also spoke of increasing the number of trained coaches, administrators, and other personnel, strengthening the institutions for sport education and administration, and establishing appropriate and effective policies, legislations, and regulations to promote sport participation. For the home run, Madam Speaker, I would like to propose a Sports Incentive Act, which will introduce a short-term incentive program aimed at generating an incredible amount of robust business activity to support the growth and development of this massive sector. Relative to this proposal is the development of a public sector partnership to have an incentive program which will seek to attract investors from home and abroad, and additionally will serve to incentivize the industry stakeholders right here in Jamaica. Madam Speaker, this incentives program will seek to provide a 10-year relief from GCT, income tax, and import duties available to all registered sports clubs. New clubs with up to 50 paying members or more, adding a maximum of 20 per year. Existing clubs that have done or intend to do substantial structural improvement and have a lease of 50 years or more on their clubhouses and playfields. Clubs that are engaged in community peace management initiatives. Clubs that are engaged in sustainable environmental projects. Projects like water harvesting, greenhouse technology, recycling, energy conservation. We must incentivize them to want to do more for sport. Madam Speaker, these categories I speak of, which would for the clubs, would make them eligible for any of these incentives, include equipment and supplies, apparel, footwear, educational material, purchase and or lease of any additional physical space which can be used to add value to sport, to housing or dorm facilities. The idea of the incentive, Madam Speaker, is to stimulate growth in the subsector and to attract a low to mid-income group of stakeholders. The importation of specific items free of GCT and custom duty for 5 years, utilizing the discretionary authority of the Minister of Finance and the Public Service. 5-year exemption from corporate taxes for investors in sporting attractions, utilizing the discretionary authority of the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service. Any investment from the private sector in the physical infrastructure towards the sports development receive the requisite tax write-offs to serve as incentive towards their investment. Madam Speaker, prior to the signing of an incentive package, of course, and I repeat, clearance must be sought from the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service to the Ministry of Sport as we look at the bigger picture. Transformation. One of the Vision 2030 goals is to increase the growth of sport as a business and commercial activity with potential to contribute to Jamaica's economic development and to ensure the consistent production of elite athletes who can compete at the highest level of on the international stage. Yes. Madam Speaker, our industry has a few established strengths and advantages that we have going for us. Our athletes are committed to the task of performing their best every single time. We are extremely good at attracting spectators from home and within and outside of the diaspora, as we excel in all of our sporting disciplines. Madam Speaker, the time has come Jamaica must now engage in designing a national strategy and a business model for sports with the following objectives: increasing the talent pool, facilitating the training of technical expertise, performance, preventative care, nutrition and psychological support, marketing, creating partnerships for brand exposure, aligned with technological solutions to showcase the experience, conducted relating and relevant research with an aim to inform those who are already involved, but also to attract those who can be inspired to join the business. Madam Speaker, there should be in every town centre, in every county, a well-equipped sporting facility to give us access to all of our people across the county. This will facilitate people from across the island having access to the highest level of competition. Madam Speaker, Montego Bay is a second city, and it deserves a multi-purpose facility, first-class multi-purpose facility. And in keeping with the promises made, Catherine Hall Sports Complex must be upgraded to provide opportunities for the athletes, the fans, and the investors. We must re-energize G.C. Foster College of Sport and Physical Education. It continues to do its best with what it has. And we're seeing athletes emerging from high schools that we never saw them before. They also provide advanced training for existing technical personnel. I am recommending we assign those who are trained in what we designate as active sports in active communities to have the widest participation in organized and recreational activities. Healthy bodies, as they say in Cuba, healthy minds. We must re-engage. We should be facilitating dialogue and conversations through public meetings on the latest trends in sports, to have the conversation about climate change and how it will impact sport, even sport here in Jamaica and across the world. Studies have shown, Madam Speaker, that approximately half of the former Winter Olympic sports hosted in cities won't be able to hold these games by 2050 due to the lack of snow and ice. Sports can play a key role in helping to raise the awareness and influence behaviors. We must act now. Madam Speaker, we have not escaped. We might not have winter sports, but extreme heat is another problem.
It's true.
And regularly staged events will have to be reconsidered as to where those venues will be held. Jamaica must now look at the bigger picture.
True.
The technological solution for a more integrated digital experience is a conversation we must facilitate. Those who are less excited about performances in the field, we must ensure that we give them an opportunity, and we must appeal to that Gen Z and that millennial base so that they can come on board in sport, doing the part of sport that they like. Madam Speaker, conferences and seminars are two most efficient ways to engage large groups. We should be seeking to go after the sports convention market by creating events to attract that segment. Here we can host business matchmaking in the areas of merchandising, media rights, and venue development. Madam Speaker, we must replenish.
Yes.
Many of those who paved the ways, we have to plan now how we will replace them. They have done great for our country, but to be sustainable, there has to be continuity. Madam Speaker, active research and development is the way forward. And we must partner with our educational institutions like UTech, GC Foster, NCU, Michael, and all who have a clean role to play. The recommendations I've made today are indeed not only practical, Madam Speaker, they are doable. They are doable. They are driven by research of proven strategies employed either by other countries or in other sectors right here in Jamaica. Madam Speaker, sports has an immense capacity for growth. A track record of success as a such sports deserves the investment. Time come to look at the bigger picture. I now turn my attention to local government, Madam Speaker. In 1993, then Minister of Local Government, Honorable Desmond Leakey, tabled Ministry Paper number 893, giving the country a commitment to reform our system of local government to create a strong, viable, and effective system of local government to deepen the democratic process and to facilitate the empowerment of citizens by enabling them to participate more fully and directly in the process of governance and management in their own affairs. Madam Speaker, that statement of objective brought back much hope for our local government arrangements, and it would have taken us out of those doldrums. Due to an overbearing central government, which went as far as to dissolve the councils at the sight of any fortitude and backbone. Madam Speaker, the then KSAC was taken down in mid-flight, and in 1984, while the late Colleen Yap served as mayor of the city of Kingston, I think so. Sufficient to complete. Sufficient. 20 minutes.
Madam Speaker, I ask that you give the member sufficient time to complete your presentation.
Members, a question before the House is that the member be given sufficient time to complete her presentation. Those in favor? Those against? Member, you have a...
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thanks for your generosity, my colleague, member from St. Catherine. Madam Speaker, the then KSAC was taken down in mid-flight in 1984, while the late Colleen Yap served as mayor of the city of Kingston. May her soul rest in peace. I'm taking this time to go through the history because the process was supported by both sides and enjoyed significant buy-in by citizens throughout the length and breadth of Jamaica as the way to secure the better management and delivery of services across all parishes in Jamaica. Among those objectives were restoration of core functions and responsibilities, financial reform, institutional upgrading, revision of laws and regulations, setting service standards and quality, changing the focus by strengthening relationships with citizens. Madam Speaker, the process culminated in the passage of the Local Government Governance Act of 2016, which became the new management framework for the local government system. There was a change of name to the municipal corporations, and a new 4-year term was prescribed. Along the way, there was a constitutional amendment empowering local authorities to perform regulatory functions to facilitate the management and development of resources of local government communities, and the passage of 2 other strategic acts, the Local Government Financing and Financial Management Act and the Local Government Unified Service and Employment Act. The noble objective of the reformed system is not being met, Madam Speaker, and Jamaica's local government is still being subjected to political control and manipulation. Elections are being held conveniently.
Yes.
Vacant seats are left empty for years, and the citizens are becoming more and more disenfranchised and alienated.
Yes.
Jamaica's last local government election was in November 2016, and by law, another was due in 2020. The same year, the general election was held. There were postponements in 2021, 2022, and 2023.
Yes.
Madam Speaker, what should have been a 4-year term is now in its 7th year, and then we question the people's apathy. In the last debate in representation of the people, postponement of elections to municipal corporations and city municipals Act 2023, on February 21st, the government provided citizens with 3 reasons for the postponement in the Memorandum of Objects and Reasons. Global economic uncertainty, the prohibitive cost of holding the elections, and to allow further time for continued public consultation on the draft legislation to enable Portmore to become Jamaica's 15th parish. Madam Speaker, more than 3 months have elapsed since the government presented those reasons. A full 25% of the extended time, and yet no additional consultations have begun with the people of Portmore. So in addition, Madam Speaker, we have seen no provision to finance elections in this current financial year. In the meantime, Madam Speaker, municipal corporations are losing members with almost 20 divisions now without representation.
20?
And the deterioration of local services, including the markets,
terrible,
the vending, the water, the parochial roads, and the garbage collection are declining. We must restore and adhere bipartisan decisions made by us together in this House. We must manage the letter and spirit of the law. We must obey its 4-year mandate, restore balance and objectivity in granting requests for the use of parochial funds and advanced development of municipal infrastructure. We must pay specific attention to building capacity at the local government level, with greater emphasis on utilizing cutting-edge technology. Madam Speaker, local government must develop partnership arrangements with institutions such as the universities we have here locally and their UDC to establish decisive strategies to boost the rural economy by giving high priority to the parochial road network, the minor water supply, and a strong rural development plan. We must pay attention, Madam Speaker, to the capacities of the municipal corporations to manage projects in the built environment to enable greater facilitation of development projects, both residential and commercial, greater monitoring of the building process, elimination of waste, reduced bureaucracy, and the ubiquitous corruption that retards our growth. Madam Speaker, greater emphasis must be placed on city and parish inspection by expanding the team of building officers to ensure a greater level of productivity and competence in responding to the citizens' applications, complaints, ensuring compliance, and reducing misery. Madam Speaker, it is when the local government machinery moves closer to the people that it becomes more responsive to the people and perform at optimal levels. Then and only then will Jamaicans become less turned off from the political process. They will return to participating in elections, and we can once again be the vibrant democracy we yearn for, with political directorate, civil servants, and citizens being accountable all the time. Madam Speaker, you see, local governments are veritable and appropriate institutions to promote democracy at the local level because they are well placed to mobilize the people through political education, political enlightenment, and political action. Madam Speaker, that is why we must strengthen the capacity of the parish development committees island-wide to become the critical vehicle for civil society participation so everyone understands and buys into the mission. solid waste management, Madam Speaker, must be an area of greater focus. At present, the performance of the Solid Waste Management Authority leaves a lot to be desired. The accumulation of garbage, the existence of random mini dumps, and the lack of adherence to planned collection timetables and monitoring are evident in every single parish.
Yeah, true.
What is worse, the acquisition of 50 new compactors at great expense to our taxpayers has done very little and has very, very little impact.
True.
Ironically, I am going to speak, allow me. Ironically, Madam Speaker, this ministry also has rural development as part of its mandate. When, in fact, many rural communities have never experienced scheduled garbage collection at all to this very date. They are participating. Madam Speaker, we must change.
Yes.
Our country is dirty. Our cities are dirty.
Yes.
When our place is dirty, we feel dirty. And we start to act dirty.
True.
We must clean up Jamaica and look at the bigger picture. Madam Speaker, we must begin with a strategy of returning the NSWMA to its core mandate as a regulatory body, focusing on all types of waste disposals, including medical and hazardous waste, establishing world-class sanitary landfills, and ensuring the Litter Act and its prescribed penalties. Madam Speaker, if this process calls for additional legislation, we can move to it. Let us get it done. Whatever it takes, Jamaica is dirty and time has come to look at the bigger picture. Recently, the minister has been saying that he will be increasing the fines.
Which one?
As part of the measures to end illegal dumping. Minister, I have no problems with increasing the fines. However, redirecting the focus of the NSWMA to its core mandate is critical to breaking the cycle of improper disposal practices, along with increased public education and, where necessary, prosecution of offenders. The same agency, Madam Speaker, cannot be the regulator and the collector at the same time.
True.
Cannot be. Mediocrity and underperformance will continue to go unchecked, and complaints will fall on deaf ears. Madam Speaker, in the Standing Finance Committee of 2023, I inquired about the security of tenure for the sanitation workers. I commend the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Local Government, as now our workers will move from a temporary contract work system to permanent pensionable employees, and this is a move in the right direction. We must commit to treating the staff better with improved training and emolument, including medical insurance for collection and disposal workers. We can say we have certified collection and disposal as we look at the bigger picture.
Transformational.
Madam Speaker, rural electrification program was a brainchild of the Most Honorable, the Right Honorable Michael Joshua Manley. It was intended to bring electricity to every nook and cranny of Jamaica into rural communities, which were underserved by the sole electricity provider. Madam Speaker, the REP was rebranded as NESOL and given the additional mandate to assist in regularizing persons who were connected illegally to the national grid. NESOL was dissolved as there were allegations of impropriety and corruption. Madam Speaker, we are now told through an MOU, the JISTV has been tasked with providing the extension of pole lines and house wiring. The Jamaican Social Investment Fund, the brainchild of the Most Honourable P.J. Patterson. While I have no difficulty with the JISTV, while I applaud the tremendous work of the JISTV over the years, I am expressing my deep concern, Madam Speaker, with this particular mandate. It worries me as I listen to the Minister of Local Government report on projects undertaken by JISTV at the instruction of the Minister. On the instruction of the Minister. JISTV, I know it to be an independent body that could be accessed by all Jamaicans at any time for any project. JISTV, Madam Speaker, is now being transformed to an agency through which Jamaicans and political interference and the quagmire of political muddiness is going to take the color of JISTV. JISTV must remain free of any political interference and must at all times be accessible to all Jamaicans, regardless of their color or creed.
Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker,
Madam Speaker,
Madam Speaker,
Madam Speaker,
Madam Speaker, I rise. Madam Speaker, I rise on a point of order, Madam Speaker. The Minister, the member is imputing motive in regards to the function of the Jamaica Social Investment Fund. Madam Speaker.
I didn't say
Madam Speaker, the memorandum of understanding that was established between JISTV and the Ministry of Technology and Science at the time, that was transferred to local government, was not done. That memorandum was not created on any political instructions, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the member is misleading the House and is bringing an institution into the political arena. I would urge the member, if she cannot substantiate the allegations that she are making, that she must withdraw those statements.
Madam Speaker, while I'm aware that the MOU has engaged JISTV to carry out the functions of pole line extension and house wiring, the fact still remains. It is funded through the Ministry of Local Government, and it is operational through the Minister of Local Government. It therefore, well, I'm not done. I'm not imputing any motive. I said it now gives the perception that JISTV has been removed from this independent body accessible by all. Now let me just be clear, because it no longer is a situation where you can simply write to the Jamaica Social Investment Fund under this program and have direct access.
Madam Speaker, with all due respect, Madam Speaker, with all due respect, Madam Speaker, JISTV operates on a memorandum of understanding with the Ministry of Local Government. Members of Parliament, communities have requested, Madam Speaker, CDCs. There are many over there, Madam Speaker, that have interacted with JISTV and have benefited, Madam Speaker. So I don't want anybody to talk about political interference, Madam Speaker. The point of order that the member is misleading the House about political motive.
Go. Okay. Madam Speaker.
Press on.
Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the perception is once you have to write to the Minister of Local Government, there's a perception that there's a... All right. Madam Speaker, I move on to the parochial road network. Yes. Without a proper parochial road network, the rural economy will continue to lag. Emphasis must be placed on building a road network suitable to modernize rural life. The minister has announced a $400 million parochial road improvement allocation for this financial year. Thank you, Minister. But I can tell you, for the announcement, But, Madam Speaker, I am sure on hearing that, every community across Jamaica is hoping that somehow their road will be included. Yes. Madam Speaker, the truth is, the people must be aware that 400 million really won't go very far. But in addition to that, that as members, we won't have control over where that is spent. I would know that Desmond is a good man. He's a good man. I also know that as a former mayor and a local government practitioner, he has a vision similar to mine. But I think he's been railroaded. And that vision is being derailed. So I say, come back home, Minister. Come back home.
Deny that one. Deny that one. Deny that one.
Madam Speaker, too often when I talk about these things, I hear, but you had 18 years. And you had 18 years. Me never there during the 18 years there. But I can say I've been here for 16 years. and 12 of those 16 years has been led by the Jamaica Labour Party. So the people have given you a mandate. Own up to that responsibility and stop blaming us.
I think you should
own that responsibility
I don't think
and look at the bigger picture.
I don't think they realize.
Madam Speaker, there needs to be a comprehensive rural roads and water development plan. Yes. Too many communities across Jamaica are still carrying pans on their heads. True. Too many communities so close to sources in their own constituency are deprived of the precious commodity.
True.
So many of them hear that the water leave from Bago gone straight above Bay, and they're not able to get it in their own communities. Time come for equity and equality. Minister, rural lives matter. Rural lives matter. Roads must be fixed wherever they are in Jamaica. Whatever the geographic location, whatever their political affiliation, road must be fixed because it's the responsibility of the government to give our people roads. There should be a uniform standard of roads, Madam Speaker. Whether it's in James Mountain in St. Catherine or Jacks Hills in St. Andrew, the roads must be fixed. Good roads with good drainage systems and a maintenance plan to repair potholes and keep our verges in good condition. Madam Speaker, let me say it. I don't care how much was done before. Once a year bushing cannot maintain verges in constituencies, especially rural constituencies. Let me go further to say those constituencies in town and townships can't get the same for bushing as those in rural Jamaica. It cannot work. Time come. The parochial network consists of more kilometers of local government road and main roads. And honestly, Madam Speaker, Minister, while I know the government has embarked on a project to fix road in housing schemes built by government, there needs to be an equal effort to fix housing schemes not built by government. Because to date, in 2023, there are still people in our communities in housing schemes still wonders who is responsible for their roads. When we form the next government, Madam Speaker.
Tell them. Say it again. Say it again. Say it again. Say it again.
When we form the next government, Madam Speaker, there will be.
Stand up.
No, Madam Speaker, I seek your protection. Madam Speaker, when we form the next government, we will undertake a comprehensive program to repair and upgrade scheme roads built by private developers before 1980. Madam Speaker, these Jamaicans are obligated to pay taxes. We are obligated to give service. Madam Speaker, we were caught, we were caught, I know why you run down my time and then you tell me time up. Madam Speaker, we were caught with our pants down last year when many of our communities were flooded due to unclean drains.
Yes.
Minister, clean the drains. Let's protect lives and protect properties. In May of each year, we are accustomed to cleaning our drains before the start of the hurricane season. Let's get it done, although the season has already started. Let us protect our people. Time. Madam Speaker, we have a vision, as well as plans and programs for local government and local government representatives. The councillor is a leader. The councillor is a leader, an elected official in his own right. The councillor, the parish councillor, is not simply an extension of the arm of the member of parliament. That local government representative must be empowered and equipped to do the work of the people. Madam Speaker, much like our Constituency Development Fund, our councillors must be given a divisional development fund as a designated funding mechanism for developmental projects in their divisions. This will allow them the opportunity to budget and to plan, to forecast on behalf of the people they were elected to serve. A similar system of checks and balances and accountability must be implemented that will ensure value for taxpayers' money. Time come to look at the bigger picture, to stop giving our councillors basket to carry water. Madam Speaker, we will restore the vision of 1993 because local government is the best avenue to demonstrate the organic partnership between local elected representatives and civil society. Minister, I know this is your, don't let the Minister of Education derail your vision. I know you have a similar vision as mine. Make sure it happens. Madam Speaker, it's impossible to speak to the roads without mentioning the street lights. Jamaican communities are dark. The highways are dark. Our city streets are dark. We must be more responsive to replacing those that go and to giving new street lights where they are needed. Minister, this can only add to the process of reducing crime and increasing visibility in our communities. We must look at the bigger picture. In conclusion, Madam Speaker,
already?
At the start of my presentation, I reminded this House that it has been 25 years since I entered representational politics. 16 of those have been in these hallowed walls. My decision to start my political career at the local government level was by choice. By choice. Thank you. However, I have watched the waning interest and steady decline in voter turnout since I was first elected in 1998. In 2003, the turnout was some 40.09%. In 2007, it was 37.92%. In 2012, it went down to 34%. And in 2016, we saw only 30% of our population turning out to vote in a local government process. When a government before an election, like in 2016, spends $1 billion on Bush Road to shore up the grey base, and then turns around and tells me that it can't afford to keep an election, we're making a mockery of our democracy. We're making a mockery of democracy. Madam Speaker, the same government would have called an election during the pandemic, and we postponed the local government election at Women Fancy. Madam Speaker, it is indeed a fact that if we are indeed committed to the principles of democracy, then this very fragile process must be preserved with strong political will. The people of Jamaica deserve nothing less. Call the local government election now. Truth is, Madam Speaker, this government has treated local government with scant regard. The municipal corporations rely on the remittances of the parochial revenue fund, sometimes 2-3 months behind in getting that fund over at the municipal corporation. Minister, let go the people their money so they can do the people's work. Madam Speaker, our work here is crucial to the uplift of our people, and it is practical that each contemplate in here our own record. How many runs have you put on the board? How many penalties have been awarded to you? Yeah. How many yellow cards, how many red cards have you gotten? No. How many hat tricks have you scored? None. How many golds, silver and bronze have you received? How many times have you been disqualified? And how many times did you simply not show? Yes. Madam Speaker, I won't publish my scorecard today. That is the job of history. And the time will come when a succeeding generation determines our mettle, individually and collectively. True. Until then, however, and as I continue to serve, I am reminded of the timeless words of William Shakespeare spoken through the central narrator Brutus in his famed Julius Caesar. There is a tide in the affairs of men. When taken at the flood, leads on to fortune. Omitted, all the voyage of their life is bound in shallows and in miseries. Madam Speaker, thank you. Thank my colleagues. Thank Jamaica Land.
Madam Speaker, I want to thank the member for her spirited presentation. And at this time, Madam Speaker.
Remember, they say imitation is the highest compliment, and I hear you complimenting somebody over the side all afternoon.
So, Madam Speaker, I now ask you, that the sectoral debate be suspended.
Question before the House is that we suspend the sectoral debate. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, I ask for the recommittal of the item statements by ministers.
The question before the House is that we have the recommittal of the item statements by ministers. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, members. The government of Jamaica, while acknowledging our own challenges locally, continues to play our part in modest but meaningful ways to ensure regional peace and stability. The government continues to be deeply disturbed by the situation in Haiti, which is unstable, with security continuing to be a major concern. Unabated violence in Haiti continues to grow, and regrettably, there are reports of instances of vigilante justice, considering the limitations faced by the Haitian National Police. There is an urgent need to restore the rule of law and effective governance to address humanitarian and human rights concerns. Even as we express concern about the security and humanitarian challenges in the country, we note that Haiti today was affected by an earthquake where there was loss of life reported. The people of Jamaica continue to stand in solidarity with the people of Haiti. And it shows, Madam Speaker, the precarious and unpredictable nature of the crisis in Haiti. Madam Speaker, Jamaica has indicated its interest in providing tangible support to Haiti, including to the Haitian National Police. This offer of support has been reiterated following the CARICOM special mission to Haiti, which I led on the 27th of February this year, and during which consultations and dialogue were held with several Haitian stakeholders. The matter was also among the issues discussed with His Excellency Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, when he visited Jamaica last month. We are aware that any specialized force in Haiti to give assistance to the people of Haiti will need the appropriate jurisdictional mandate as specified under international law. Madam Speaker, on the 21st of December 2022, His Excellency Ariel Henry, Prime Minister of Haiti, brokered a national consensus for an inclusive transition and transparent elections. During the CARICOM special mission, it was indicated by some stakeholders that this process needed to be made more inclusive and should be broadened so that there can be a narrowing of differences. It was also made clear on many levels that most Haitian stakeholders would wish to have the opportunity to widen the political consensus to eventually lead to the holding of elections under the appropriate conditions. During the CARICOM special mission, CARICOM pledged to continue its engagement with Haiti in order to exercise its good office's role in trying to facilitate a solution to the deep political crisis affecting the country. Against that background, the CARICOM heads of government subsequently endorsed the holding of a stakeholder meeting in Jamaica, following the offer made by Jamaica to host the meeting during the mission to Haiti. Also, following on the findings of the mission, CARICOM has agreed to establish an eminent persons group to take the process forward in facilitating the good office's role. That group is comprised of former Prime Minister of Jamaica, Mr. Bruce Golding, the Honorable Kenny Anthony, former Prime Minister of St. Lucia, and the Right Honorable Perry Christie, former Prime Minister of the Bahamas. The eminent persons group, along with a small team comprising the technical expertise in mediation, security, and political research, supported by the CARICOM Secretariat, has been tasked to facilitate consultations with Haitian stakeholders. These consultations are intended to build consensus and allow for inclusive participation in a neutral environment. Most importantly, a majority of Haitian stakeholders have agreed to this approach in support of finding peace and stability in their country. Madam Speaker, the Haitian stakeholder consultations are to be held in Jamaica from the 11th to the 13th of June this year in Kingston. I can advise that the invitations were issued to the Haitian stakeholders by Prime Minister Davis of the Bahamas, who is the current chair of the Conference of CARICOM Heads. As host, Jamaica will be providing the venue for the consultations, as well as arrangements to facilitate the attendees, who will include representatives from Haiti, the eminent persons group, the Prime Ministers of the Bahamas and Haiti, the CARICOM Secretary General, and representatives from international partners and donor support for Haiti. Prime Minister Davis and I will officially hand over the process to the eminent persons group at the opening event. However, I must underscore and emphasize that notwithstanding any representation from states regionally, the consultations themselves will only involve the Haitian stakeholders, supported by the eminent persons group, with their requisite technical personnel. The eminent persons group will update CARICOM as appropriate and necessary. Madam Speaker, it is important that the need for confidence, confidentiality, and patience be respected, as this necessary but delicate process of consultation is engaged. I urge, therefore, that we allow this to be the basis on which the consultations are held, and trust that the relevant information will be made available at the appropriate time. I also underscore that these consultations are for the Haitian people. It is their meeting as they seek to determine what is in the best interest of their country. While Jamaica and others in the region have a keen interest, it is also incumbent on all of us at this time to adopt a posture of non-interference in the process, while being active in support and allowing the space for the dialogue to be held. The government is hopeful that the consultations to be held next week in Jamaica will be a significant step in the process of restoring stability in Haiti. We recognize that it is a process that will need continued support by Jamaica, CARICOM, and others to ensure a satisfactory conclusion. The people of Jamaica and our brothers and sisters in Haiti can be assured, Madam Speaker, that this government will do all it can to support this process towards restoration of peace and stability in Haiti. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Madam President.
Madam Speaker, I thank the Prime Minister for this update of the House in relation to the current process underway to try and find a sustainable solution to the Haitian situation, which is a solution being fashioned and designed by the Haitian people themselves. That is, I believe, the way it should be, and any attempt to impose on Haiti any extraterritorial solution, whether it be at the level of international development bodies or individual governments outside of Haiti would be the wrong approach. And Haiti has suffered terribly from foreign interference over the years, centuries of it, quite frankly, which have contributed to their underdevelopment, poverty, and challenges that they have now. I believe that this is an example of CARICOM playing a beneficial role in trying to find a solution via an approach which is sound in principle and which should be supported. I hope that the upcoming meeting of the Haitian stakeholders will have full participation by a broad cross-section representative of the key groups within Haiti that must come on board to design a way towards Haiti once again being a functional democracy, which is in the interests of us all. And we certainly commit our support to the Haitian people in their efforts to solve their problems. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister will at this time make a brief statement.
Madam Speaker, I ask for your indulgence, and the members of the House, I ask for your indulgence as well. My statement is not a written statement. It is in relation to commitments made regarding the provision of the terms of the job descriptions and the code of conduct for parliamentarians, ministers, and members of parliament. Madam Speaker, the process is well advanced. We have identified, Madam Speaker, the establishment of a committee to review the job description and the code of conduct. We have consulted with the opposition. We have so far shared one document with them, and others will follow shortly. So I'm giving notice to the House that next week we will name the committee and begin the full review of both the job descriptions and the code of conduct. And we hope that within short order we can establish a process where these job descriptions can be finalized and made public and become the template, the framework against which the execution of our duties can be judged by the public. And the committee will also be tasked to articulate an accountability framework and to finalize for ourselves the code of conduct. It is important, Madam Speaker, that the Parliament establishes its own integrity. Yeah, yeah.
Madam Speaker, we are in favor of anything that would entrench integrity in the life of parliamentarians, clarity around what our roles are so the wider society understands and can hold us accountable for what we do or don't do. And so we intend to be constructive, engage constructively in this process. We received the long overdue job descriptions today. We had long overdue job descriptions today. We will review them and we will name our representatives to the Joint Select Committee that is being established. And we look forward to receiving the draft code of conduct so we can do the same. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Well, Madam Speaker, it has been a good sitting. Two excellent presentations from our side, from Minister Marlene Malahou Fort and Member of Parliament Natalie Nita Garvey. Although both presentations were extensive and extended. So at this point, Madam Speaker, it is not contemplated for us to do any further business today. I therefore ask that the House adjourns until tomorrow, Wednesday, June 7, 2023 at 2 p.m. sharp.
On the motion of adjournment, Madam Speaker, I rise in solidarity with the victims of the fire on Sunday, May 28 in the Musgrave Market in Port Antonio, which damaged about 80% of the market. This affecting directly about 200 vendors and thousands by extension. The Musgrave Market is not just a place for vending. It's a home away from home for many. It is a community, a family that has been destroyed, a safe haven destroyed. Madam Speaker, I would like to commend the government of Jamaica through the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development, led by Minister Mackenzie, for the quick response in providing $10 million for the cleanup, which signals the start of the rebuilding. I must commend our mayor and the team for the seamless coordination of the cleanup over the past 3 days. I must commend Portlanders who took part in the cleanup. It was a show of unity and action, a reminder that Portlanders represent the best of what being a Jamaican is: warm, loving, kind, hardworking, resilient, with an unending capacity to overcome and for greatness. Once again, my heart goes out to all affected and thank all for their outpouring of love and support and prayers. Out of adversity comes opportunity, and we will not only rebuild the market bigger and better, but also the lives of those who depend on the market. It is a historical landmark and the heart of our town. We will rebuild bigger and better. God bless Jamaica.
Madam Speaker, I would also like to extend our empathies as well and to advise that somewhere along the line we take these things for granted, not understanding the depth of how it hurts so many families in a significant way. I also want to extend those sympathies as well to the vendors of the Linstead Market, who would have had tremendous loss from a fire this week as well. It goes to show, though, Madam Speaker, that as we rebuild, we must be seeking to rebuild in a way that allows for our materials, our practices to be far more sustainable and not so easily destroyed. We have been building our markets much the same way for all of my lifetime, and perhaps it's time to look in a different way at how best we can prevent this from happening in the future.
Members, the question before the House is that we do adjourn until tomorrow, the 7th of June at 2 p.m. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. This House is now adjourned. Members, just before you leave, may I remind all members that there is a refresher program taking place. We had our first session this morning, and there's another session this morning. You can join virtually. There's a lot left tomorrow for us to learn. Don't think we know everything. There's plenty that the course has to offer that will assist us. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
Here is a special parenting message brought to you by the National Family Planning Board, 5 Sylvan Avenue, Kingston 5.